welcome back to Northwest City Politics in the Know with Juanita. We're glad to welcome you back to our show again this week. And we're very happy there are people like you out there that are interested in our cities and what's happening in them and want to keep up to date on it. So we're glad that you're watching us. And if you haven't watched our show before, each week we'll have somebody on from one of the 9 cities in Northwest Community Television's viewing area that will help us understand the issues that are going on in the city, different kinds of things like redevelopment and budgeting and all kinds of issues. Then from time to time we'll have groups that interact with all our cities, like the state legislators, like the Hennepin County Commissioners. So we're glad that you're with us, and we'll encourage you to have a pen and paper handy, because particularly tonight, if you're from New Hope, you'll want to take down some information. So if any of the issues that we talk about tonight are ones that concern you, then you can be in touch with your city to gather more information from city staff, or with your mayors and council people to let them know how they're feeling. And if you miss doing that, keep in mind that you can always find our programs on our YouTube channel so that you have a second chance to get that information. So we're glad that you're with us. And tonight we're very happy to welcome Kathi Hemken, the mayor of New Hope.
Thank you.
We're glad to have you back on our show. We're glad that you keep on coming and keep us updated.
Well, I like to come.
Well, we enjoy you. And since you've been on our show many times before, you know that I'm going to let you introduce yourself out to our wider audience. People from New Hope will know about you, but might be people in other cities that aren't familiar with you. So we'll give you a chance to let people know about yourself.
Well, I'm Kathi Hemken. I've lived in the city about 40 years. I've got 2 children, 4 stepchildren. And I've been a community activist since the time I very carefully moved here. I moved here because of the school district, and we stayed here because of the school district. And I really do like our school district here. I ran for mayor about 7 years ago, so I've been the mayor for 7 years. I plan to run one more time. There's so much fun stuff going on in New Hope, I really hate to give it up just yet.
Now we'll switch back to some more redevelopment projects. 2 apartments complexes have come into being over the last, couple years, I guess. There's Compass Point, which is at 62nd and West Broadway, and then the Gates of New Hope, which are down along Medicine Lake Road and 169. Can you tell us about the history that led up to both of these projects?
Well, let's start with Compass Point.
Okay.
2 years ago, or maybe 3 years ago, they came to us and proposed this federally subsidized program. Now, let me make that real clear. The federal government was going to give the contractors, the builders, some money to build some apartments that would be rented to people that make 60% of the average income in New Hope. And so the first time they applied for this federal grant, they did not get it. So they waited a year, they applied again, and the second time they did. And so then they came to us with some proposals. We went to the citizens. The neighbors, this was going to be a 4-story building. And the neighbors were not happy. It's a big building.
Oh, it is.
And so we went back to the developers, and they decided to put 3 stories on one side, 4 on the street side. And again, it's a big building. It takes up a lot of space. But what was there before was a old icky gas station that was empty and had been empty for years. And then there were 3 vacant lots that had apartments on them that were poorly managed. We bought them, I believe, 17 years ago, and they sat there as empty lots. When you have an empty lot sitting there, you get no tax value for that at all. It's green space, but it's no tax value, and people just thought it was kind of a dump, and they would throw stuff there. And then there was an apartment complex, again, not well managed, and was causing a lot of trouble for the neighbors. So this developer bought the 3 empty lots and the gas station, and this apartment building that was there, tore the whole mess down, started to build. It's 68 units, parking underground. There is no doubt that it is a big building. It was full before they got anywhere near being done. There's a 700 family waiting list to get in.
So there's a real need.
There's a need
for what? for apartments that are affordable to working people, particularly people starting out in different areas?
Well, not just starting out, but we don't have a lot of apartments that our teachers,
Right,
our
right.
new teachers can work at.
Well, that's what I was thinking, starting out, like teachers,
yeah.
police,
So we did need something in that category. They were very, very accommodating to work with. We went to see the neighbors a couple times. The neighbors, we had a couple meetings with them because, of course, rumors fly.
Oh, definitely.
We wanted to make sure that the neighbors understood what we were building. The people that are living there have to have a job.
Okay.
They have to make twice the rent. So if the rent is $800, they have to have a job that pays $1,600 a month. They have to make twice the rent. And the other thing is, if they've ever had a police call for something other than medical, don't even bother to apply. So we found a well, we didn't, but the contractor found a management company called Stephen Scott. And that's really the key to these big apartment complexes, that you have to have a good management system in place, because it's poor management that really makes these buildings fall apart.
And so that's like coming into New Hope from the Brooklyn Park area.
Yes.
So if we switch down to
The
coming
gates of
into
New
New
Hope.
Hope from Golden Valley.
What was down there was an old insurance building, a distressed house. The city did not get involved in buying that land at all. So the developer bought those two pieces of property, tore them down. Actually, they had the fire department come in and burn one of them as a exercise. Tore those down. There's a garage and the 60 or 32 units, I believe there is, maybe 38. Don't remember. Anyway, it's 1, 2, and 3 bedroom, and again, that was fully rented before they even opened. So there is a need for apartments. There's a lot of people that don't want to live in houses.
Right.
New Hope is becoming a very handy place to live. Our bus service isn't great, but we're not. The one on Bass Lake Road is about 2 blocks from where the light rail is going to go. So we have some amenities, and these apartments both are well managed, and we're happy with them.
And they've got just completed, like, within the last how many months?
Oh, probably 6.
Yes, the last 6 months.
Yep. They opened, both of them opened about a month apart.
Right.
So both of them are going on. Again, our community development team really needs to be congratulated, because they were the ones that were working with them.
Oh, right.
When they built, we have an inspector, and he thought, and I really applaud him for this, he would go to Compass Point and Gates of New Hope on a daily basis and go through the building, say, this is good, this fix that, and I'll be back tomorrow.
Right.
And he'd come back the next day and said, okay, good, you fixed that, and now this is good. And so this kept them on schedule and below budget on both of the units, because he was there on a daily basis, keeping everything moving along.
Now, to switch topics just a little bit, Meadow Lake Park received new playground equipment, and I thought maybe you could talk a little bit about the process that New Hope has set in place for replacing that type of thing across the city. How is it done?
Well, we have many parks, and what they do is they look at the park who has the oldest equipment, and that was Meadow Lake. It was 22 years old. It might have looked good, but if there's little fractures or some rust somewhere, we certainly don't want a child to get hurt on our playground equipment. And so they inspect that yearly, and then they deem whether or not it's safe. Well, in Meadow Lake, they were it was 22 years old, so they have to take that out, and then they redo the bed that the equipment sits in. Well, they used to put sand in there.
Oh, right.
The problem with sand is it's not very ADA compatible, so a wheelchair couldn't go on the sand. And the other thing is we have sand bees in New Hope. And so with this sand, and the cats, of course, it wasn't always as sanitary as we would have wanted it. So they put in some sort of a wood chip, a manufactured wood chip in there. But they redo the outside, in the container they call it, and then they put in this other stuff. And what they've been doing is going out to the community and inviting them in to tell us, what do you want? Some communities have a lot of little kids. And they want a different kind of play equipment in their community than the ones who have a little bit older kids. We open this up to the public. We ask them to bring their children. We don't open it up to the whole city just because it's expensive to invite the whole city.
Right.
It's hard to get them there.
Oh, right.
So
right.
we have a radius that we send out this notice to.
Around the park.
Yep. So then they come and they tell us, we show them the equipment that's available, and we let them pick out what they want, and we have a budget, of course. You have to have a budget. And you pick out what you want in that budget.
Right.
And then we install it. And so that's where it came from. And it takes a long time because you have to take out the old equipment,
Right.
dig out the stuff, put a new container in, put new stuff, the wood chips on,
Right.
and then put the equipment there. So if you look at the equipment at Meadow Lake Park, it's a lot different than the equipment at Hidden Valley Park.
Sure.
Because the kids, somebody said, well, those kids are going to grow up. Yes, they are. But let's take care of the kids that are there right now, and hopefully they'll stay there and play on this equipment. The one at Meadow Lake is very well used, as all the parks are.
Right. So what is the time length from when you start the project to when it gets completed and people can use it?
Very often, if you call the start of the project when they announce that we're going to do that, that process of getting them to pick out the equipment takes a couple months. And then after we do that, we have to go out for bids.
Right.
Because any city has to get bids on something.
Oh, definitely.
Some of what we found is some of the work we can do ourselves. The city staff can do themselves. Some of it has to be done by an outside contractor because we just don't have the capabilities. And so we do the city part that we can, and we get bids. They come in, and just because you get a bid on Monday doesn't mean they can start on Tuesday.
Right.
And so the whole process probably takes 8-9 months.
Yeah.
From the time they announce until it's open to the kids to play. And even the one at Meadow Lake, even though it looks like it's done, there's still some finish work.
Oh, sure.
So they open it up to the kids, and then the finish work is maybe laying some sod. We don't want to sign off on the contract until we know the sod's going to grow, and we know that the equipment isn't going to sink one way or another. And so we let it sit for about, through the winter.
Right.
And then typically they'll come and fix anything that needs to be fixed, and then we sign off on the thing. So it does take a long time. Anything in city government takes a long time.
Oh, definitely.
We have found on the council that if you move slowly, you're going to get a better product.
Oh, right.
People are going to see and be able to have a say in what you get. You get a better product, and people buy into that better product. And so we move slow. It seems like we're not doing anything, but really we're moving along. It just takes forever.
So now your Park and Rec department are evaluating the other older.
Yep, they'll look
playgrounds.
at the next one. Actually, when Meadow Lake was done, we were scheduled to do the one at Northwood Park, but there's going to be some other stuff being done at Northwood Park, and it made sense to do it all at once, to do the play equipment and the road and park construction stuff. So Meadow Lake got pushed ahead of Northwood Park.
But now if people live up in the area or close by, they can go investigate what all the new pieces of play equipment are available.
Oh, and it's fun. It's really fun equipment.
Now we're going to come back to redevelopment again because you got lots of things going.
We do.
Right? Now work is getting underway on what they're calling Parkview / Winnetka Learning Center to kind of identify it. And that site is at 55th and just off of Winnetka, where Hosterman used to be. In that general area, to define it for people. Now that was a fairly good sized site at 17 acres. How did you come to what's going to happen today?
Well,
in the process
where Hosterman was is now District 287. So that piece was kind of cut off many months ago. Winnetka Learning Center came up for sale, and the school district approached the city. Winnetka Learning Center was no longer needed by the school district, and it was not a building that was worth saving. And so when we bought that, we tore the building down. We did the same thing, cleaned up the soil, again used some TIF money to make up the difference. And that really makes sense. We needed a piece of property that was flat and clean without a building on it. When I say clean, if there's any contamination in the soil, that has to be taken care of.
Right.
And what happened at the Central Homes, that's this Parkview, there was some unstable soil. It wasn't contaminated, it was just unstable. Because at one point, I think it must have been a dump when they were putting in Winnetka Learning Center, and there was a bunch of things buried. So they had to dig that all out and get rid of that and make it a good, stable site. Central Homes came to us and proposed to build 60 single-family homes. 29 of them will be 3-bedroom, single-family, standalone homes, and 31 of them will be standalone 3-story townhomes. Just a different, on smaller lots, just a different type of home. They're in the process of putting in the infrastructure because when you buy a piece of land like that, you have to put in sewer and water, and they buried all the underground cables. That's a lot of work that has to be done, and that's what people have been seeing, is because they first they came in with a plan to show us, and then again we went to the public, and they thought the plan looked good. The plan had to be tweaked a little bit because it didn't fit exactly like they thought. And so after all that, they are now putting in the utilities, the underground utilities. They hope to have 2 model homes. Yet this fall, I find that very hard to believe. It's getting, I mean, we've had really nice weather, but it's getting to be late fall pretty quick here. They're still grading and putting in the roadways and things like that. They're hoping to build, this is a 3 or 4 year project. So they're not going to build spec homes other than the 2 model homes. But what they will do is they will sell a lot and they'll put a house there for you. They don't want to build all 60 homes and then have them all go on the market. That's very pricey and very costly for a developer. So they'll build them as they get the lot sold.
And so probably by next spring they're going to be able to actually see something.
I hope so.
Because that's been a couple years in the doing.
It has.
To the point where it's at now.
There's a lot of stuff that happens behind the scenes that the public doesn't see. And that's the community development people working with the developer so that you get the type of house you want. Typically they'll come in with 3 or 4 kinds of houses. We certainly don't want a $500,000 house there. That doesn't make sense. Didn't make sense to them, doesn't make sense to us. These homes should sell for about $350,000 and the townhouses about $250,000. And we felt that would fit into the neighborhood quite well. And so when they showed us the models that they were contemplating, that's where the community development guys come in and say, you don't want to put in a house that isn't going to fit with the rest of the houses that are there.
So in a sense, the city and the developer are creating a whole new neighborhood,
Oh, they certainly are. Yeah.
So there's lots of details that the city had to think about ahead of time, I'm sure.
Well, when we put the water main down Winnetka, we knew that they were going to move there. We needed to put a stub off there. Obviously, they're going to use more water than Winnetka Learning Center used. The same, if you use the water, it's got to go somewhere, so you need a sewer system. Again, the same kind of thing. We didn't want people's sewers backing up, so we had to put a bigger sewer line in. The stuff that went down Winnetka, that's ours. We put that in. The stuff on the property itself, that's theirs. That's Central Homes. And they put it on all that kind of stuff.
Now, did TIF get involved in this project, the tax increment financing?
Yes, because when we, again, just like when we bought the Kmart site, you buy the land, you buy the building, you tear it down, you clean up the soil. That all costs money to do that. And when you go back to sell that property to a developer, they don't necessarily want to pay for that tear down of that building. They want a nice clean piece of land, but somebody has to pay. And so when this piece of property is going to bring in a lot of taxes because with a school, it was a tax-free piece of property. Any money that each of that house pays now in taxes will go right back.
Ah.
And when you set up a tax increment financing district, and there's rules, then all of that money that you spent out of that EDA fund, that will go back in there, and there's a time frame
Right.
of which you want it repaid. If it gets paid sooner than that because the taxes are higher,
Right.
or you get more money in taxes back, then once that's all paid back, you release the tax increment financing district, and it's no longer there. They need a time frame because they need to know how much of that money is going to go into that tax increment financing to replenish that fund, and how much will go into the general fund. Because when you and I pay taxes on our houses, the city portion goes into the general fund. This is a little different. It's still city money, it's still used for city stuff, but it's very specifically for development and redevelopment. And you have to have some money to do that, because otherwise you become a stagnant community and you don't.
And it isn't a gift to the businesses, but it is a preparation, so it's ready for them to
Heavens,
work.
no, it's not. That business or that contractor still pays full taxes. Hy-Vee still pays full taxes. A lot of those taxes go, of course, to the state and
the county,
the state and the county, but the city portion of it doesn't change. That's set by the assessor, the Hemken County assessor. It's just where that money goes in the pot. If you think of a couple piggy banks at home, so it would go in the piggy bank for the car, it might go in the piggy bank for the vacation, or just the general buying food piggy bank. So it depends on where it's going to go. It still comes back to the city, it just goes in a special spot. And that money is highly regulated by the state, so it can't be spent for something else.
Yeah, and the city has to get approval for those.
Oh, yes, yes.
So an important tool that cities can use.
Very important.
Now we've got one more project we've got to talk about. The land by the golf course that used to have some old dilapidated apartments that have been down for a while.
We like to say distressed.
Okay, distressed. Distressed apartments.
Yes.
That is now moving forward.
It is. The city bought that in 2005. Tore down the apartments that were there. They were poorly managed.
Oh,
there was a lot of police calls that went there. In some cases there was water overflowing, and they never took care of that, and they really needed to come down. Well, just about the time we bought it, took them down, cleaned the land, we had the recession. And so we didn't have any developers interested in the property at that point. So we waited, and just recently a company called Atlantis came to us. They build very high-end apartments in downtown Minneapolis. They want to build a crescent-shape building, 4 stories, 180 units, right there looking at the golf course. They're hoping to, I'm thinking they should put a little hole in the fence and have a golf cart in the basement. You could just get in your golf cart, go play golf. It's a beautiful idea for that piece of property. Now the neighbors, of course, have been looking at, for 10 years, have been looking at a green space. So this is going to be a little difficult for them. What we're asking Atlantis to do, we signed a 6-month agreement with Atlantis, so we would work just with them.
And that's part of the general stage of moving development forward. People might not be aware of that. Well, you haven't signed on to the deal yet?
Well, Atlantis will now spend considerable money doing some designs. If they think we're working with 2 or 3 other developers, they're not going to spend that money, and why should they? And so what they asked is you sign an agreement with them and say, I won't negotiate with anybody else. What they'll come back with 2 or 3 designs, ideas, we'll then go to the public with those. The same kind of thing, if you don't have something to show people, they have no place to say, you know, if you made that a little longer, a little taller, put it the other way, I don't like it that way. So then they'll come back with 2 or 3 or 4 concepts, and then we'll invite the public in a couple times to look at these concepts. They'll tweak that, they'll come back, we'll invite the public in again to look. This has to be a project that the public embraces.
And we just have a few minutes left, so I thought we'll touch very briefly on the fact that Northwood Lake which is on Boone, or between, what, 42nd and 36th, has some problems with water problems,
Well,
and that there's a plan in place
there's
for
a
it
plan.
now.
When it rains,
Uh-huh.
water comes cascading down Boone Avenue, and it goes into the lake. Well, along with that water cascading down is all the leaves and the grass and the stuff that was in the street.
Right.
And so they're proposing to put a big holding tank underground. They'll put something in so the bacteria won't be in it.
Okay.
They'll catch this water.
Uh-huh.
They'll use this treated water to water the ball fields, which is really kind of good.
Yeah.
If there's a lot of rain and it overflows, they're putting in 3 little holding ponds so that we can filter the water before it gets into Northwood Lake. This isn't going to cure all of Northwood Lake's problems, but it is going to help with that. Now there's a watershed, the Bassett Creek watershed.
Right.
They are giving us quite a bit of money to help with this project.
Right.
They also believe that this will help with the quality of the water. So I think it's pretty ingenious. They're going to be watering the ball fields in the park with this rainwater that they're saving.
Right.
And they'll put something so it won't have bacteria in it.
Right.
It won't be drinkable, but you're not going to drink
Right.
it anyway. And it'll save to clean out the lake a little bit. They'll have to go in and clean out this holding tank occasionally, but it sure is easier than cleaning out the lake.
Yeah, a whole different way of
Whole
looking at
different-
purifying
We
or
can
saving
thank
the water.
both our members that are sitting on this watershed
Right.
board and our public works guys who were thinking about what do you do with this water.
Right, right.
And so this should solve a couple. We have a team in New Hope, a staff that is just phenomenal. And they keep coming up with these great ideas because they're reading publications, they're
Right,
going to meetings,
right.
they're finding out what's new and innovative,
Right.
and they bring it back and the council says, whoa, great idea.
Yeah. Well, I want to thank you so
Well, thank
much
you,
for
thank you.
bringing all these forward so people know what's happening in the area of New Hope or what's going to in the future. And we'll encourage those of you in New Hope to take time to share your ideas with Mayor Hemken or with the council members, or gather more information if it's a subject that you think stirred your interest up by contacting the city staff. And then we want to let you know that in November, and we'll give you some more information on that, the process of programming is going to change. In one of our channels will be standard definition and one will be high definition, and we'll give you some more information that we're going to be on the high definition channel. But just to kind of clue you up a little bit ahead of time. Bye.